Well, it says we're live. Hello, everyone. It's Tuesday, 4 o'clock Pacific, 6 o'clock Central, 7 o'clock Eastern, midnight in Dublin. See if I've got this right. 9 o'clock Wednesday morning in Australia, and it's Facebook Live. And it's the first of the month. And so it's Michelle Ross and I, our Director of Clinical Services, here to answer your questions. Hello, Michelle.
Hi, Dr. Tom. Nice to see you.
It's always fun, and it always goes so fast. So we can start with, if you, Michelle, have a couple of the questions that we didn't get to last time.
I was just scrolling back. I should have had that planned.
Oh, I didn't think to ask you to have it ready. So.
I should have had that ready. I thought I was saving them over. Let's see if anyone's posted anything yet.
Well, in the meantime, a study came out on vitamin D, and I don't think I've shown this to people. 790 people admitted to the hospital positive for COVID. If their vitamin D level was below 17, every one of them died. If their vitamin D level was above 31.5, none of them died. Where do you want your vitamin D? And there's lots of studies like that. Another study came out recently from a laboratory, the largest laboratory in the US called LabCorp, and they looked at 190,000 people who did blood tests to see if they were positive for the virus. And they also checked them for vitamin D. What did they find? For every 1 point that your vitamin D goes up, your risk of being positive for COVID went down by 1.6 points.
Wow.
So 190,000 people. I mean, so it's not going to cure the disease, but it's going to support your immune system in protecting you. That's better. It's going to support your immune system. So from that perspective up, and I've got my phone so I can say hello. Jenny's here from Washington State, Dorada, New York City. Hey, Dorada. Maria says, I'm susceptible to kidney stones, even though I eat very healthy, no gluten, dairy, sugar, grains, and I drink mostly water besides a couple of cups of green tea each day. So you're doing the right things. Right now, I have to avoid high oxalate foods such as dark green vegetables, berries, coffee, chocolate, beets, cranberries, etc. I had to stop taking vitamin C and D, magnesium, which is difficult during the pandemic. What else can I do to prevent my kidney stones and boost my immune system at the same time? Really good question. Really good. Michelle, let's tag team on this one. I'll start with a couple of things that I can think of. One of the, well, actually, I'll ask you about this, Michelle. What's that protocol for the hot packs? What's it called? Not Scientology.
Fomentations.
Right. The Seventh-day
Adventists back from the sanitation days, the sanitariums. I think that's what it is, yeah.
And I'm sorry, what was that called?
Fomentations.
Fomentation. And when we look at the science on that, they published about that in the 1920s after the 1918 Spanish flu that killed millions of people. And they showed how beneficial it was to help support the immune system. Now that was done, I believe, mainly for people who already were admitted to the hospital. But Michelle, is that something that people can do at home on their own?
Absolutely.
Can you talk about that for a minute?
Certainly. So the easiest way to do it, because back in the day, I remember when I was little, my mom would do heat up towels, and those are really hard to handle, hot, wet towels, when you're trying to lay that over somebody's chest. So now they have something called a Thermophore, which is a moist heating pad. So much different than these, like a normal heating pad. They're more expensive, but they're a lifetime. It's like a purchase that you'll have indefinitely. And you put that over somebody's chest for 20 minutes. The whole time they need to have a cold cloth that you keep dipping in ice water and replacing every few minutes. You need to make sure they're drinking water. Their feet need to be bundled up, probably like a wool blanket or some kind of blankets over the top of them. And then at the end of that 20 minutes or half an hour, then it's ice on the chest for about a minute. And then another round for 30 minutes, 20 to 30 minutes, then ice. And so you do like 3 rounds of that. And then they can just go to bed. So it really will help to break up congestion in the lungs. So it's very beneficial for that.
It's great. It's a great protocol. I knew nothing about it until this current crisis. And then Michelle sent me a couple of articles. I started looking into it. And it's one of those tools that's going to help this much. And so if you have congestion, you absolutely do it. But as Michelle was talking about it, just oh yeah, of course. The absolute strongest thing, the most powerful impact on changing the physiology of one's body in terms of their resilience and their ability to handle stress coming at them, I've never seen anything like this before, is the Wim Hof breathing and immersion. It drops my jaw. I'm actually getting a unit that I'm going to have here at the house because I believe in this very much. And the sensationalism sounds weird, right? Oh my God, you're sitting in an ice bath and all of that. But there's a whole protocol to breathing and meditation, quieting yourself down, doing some exercises to warm your body up. And then you go in there. And my first time I sat in it for 3.5 minutes, which is a pretty long time.
Yeah.
And the goal is, if people can, for a minute. And that's a lot, but you're really concentrating on your breathing. And what it's doing is shocking your system, but then the rebound response of your blood vessels and your lymphatic system. I felt great for about 3 hours after I do these sessions. My body just feels much more alive, alert, and it's not a stress hormone. My pulse is low and relaxed. And I've seen the results in people who commit to it long term, and they've dropped my jaw. My good friend, my training partner in California for 10 years, we trained twice a week, every week. And the difference in his body when he started doing this, second to anything I've ever seen. I've never seen anything be so safe, if done properly, and impactful on building resiliency in your body. So for this person with the kidney stones, really good question. Above all else, of course, you want an anti-inflammatory diet. You're doing everything right now, it sounds like, from the counseling you've gotten so far. I would consider fomentations, of course, or Wim Hof. And Wim is W-M, second word, H-O-F. Just Google them. Lots of videos, lots of Facebook videos, and you can find a class and learn how to do this. Michelle, anything else you want to add for this person?
Yeah, on Netflix, if you have Netflix, Goop, Gwyneth Paltrow did a 6 or 7 part series, and one of the episodes is all on Wim Hof. So that's an easy way to kind of just watch people participating. Very interesting. But I would want to, for oxalates, I would want to see a Great Plains Laboratory oats test, because there's such a connection with candida, yeast, fungal overgrowth. And I mean, these foods that are high oxalates are healthy foods. They're plant-based foods, right? So sometimes you have to mildly reduce oxalates, but sometimes we can go in with Band-Aids while we're addressing the root cause and bind up some of those oxalates, make sure that somebody has optimal B6. And there's things that you can do as you're working through and getting to the root cause and figuring out what's really causing this issue, because it's definitely downstream, as you would say, Dr. Tom. This is like into the waterfall. What is upstream in the river that we missed?
That's exactly right. So by the time you get symptoms, you've fallen over a waterfall into the pond below, and you're swimming up to the surface. And oh, you're okay. And you're trying to stay afloat, but the water's really turbulent because the waterfall keeps falling into the pond. So the water's really turbulent. You're living your life somehow in a way that's causing the production of kidney stones, right? You have to go upstream. And what Michelle's referring to is upstream. I made the assumption from your question that you're working with a healthcare practitioner, but Michelle is absolutely right. Mold is a common source for unexplained kidney stones. Unexplained, it's not a common source, but when you can't figure out why it's happening, mold infections, yeast infections can be a strong contributing factor. So you might want to take a look at that. A shout out to Cindy. It says, hello to all of you from Pennsylvania. Debbie's here from Kelowna, British Columbia. Amanda's here from Sydney, Australia. What's your opinion on coffee enemas to support the liver when undergoing a toxic chemical detox? Do they interfere with the good bacteria in the microbiome? If you only manage to use 200 milliliters, is there any science supporting the good or bad use of coffee enemas? Michelle, do you want to start with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I've seen coffee enemas be profound for people in advanced Lyme and mold for just taking the edge off of the pain. So in lieu of taking some really hardcore damaging pain medication, they can do coffee enemas and it can just really relieve pain. So this was first initiated at a clinic in Mexico, and I'm spacing on the name of the doctor. Do you have the name of the doctor off the top of your head? It'll come to me.
Is that Sandoz Clinic?
No, Gerson. Dr. Gerson, it's the Gerson protocol.
Max Gerson.
Yeah, so they'll take people that have cancer that haven't yet done chemo or radiation, and they'll have them do 6 coffee enemas a day and 13 or 14 juices, which is really challenging to do at home because it's a lot of effort to do that on your own. You almost have to have a caretaker. So it's easier for people to go to the clinic and actually have the juices handed, have the coffee enema coffee prepped for them, and to kind of have that walk through. But I have seen people do that at home, and there's a book that he's written with really great information on that. I've also seen, so the theory behind it is that it stimulates the production of glutathione. And I have seen test that Great Plains Laboratory organic acid test of somebody who had been doing coffee enemas, and I was really concerned that they were going to be really low in glutathione because they were quite ill, and their glutathione was actually high, normal, optimal. And the only thing we could connect it to was the consistency of their coffee enemas. So is anything like all good or perfect? Is there a possibility that it could wash out some beneficial flora? I mean, there's also a chance that it could maybe wash out some of the bacteria and diverticuli, right? But there's not a lot, nobody stands to make money off of this. So there's not a lot of research you can dig into. There's kind of theory and people like writing books and saying, hey, I worked with all these people and this is what happened. But there's not a lot to back it up research-wise.
Really good answer. Thank you. And, sometimes we hear that coffee makes you healthier and younger. And sometimes we hear coffee will increase your risk of heart attacks. And it depends on the studies that you read. And the reason for that is because those symptoms are downstream of a problem that's above the waterfall, up the stream somewhere, right? If you carry the gene CYP1A2, pretty common gene, about 30% of North Americans, Anglo-Saxons, European descent, have this gene, CYP1A2. You're at risk of being a slow metabolizer. What that means is that your liver doesn't break stuff down very quickly. And there's specific chemicals and pharmaceuticals that you really should not take normal doses of, because a normal dose, your liver may not break it down very well. And so it comes across as a very high dose, and you can have toxicity problems from too much of a medication when you're taking the normal dose, but you've got a gene that's making your liver sluggish to break it down. The reason I tell you that is because coffee is one of those chemicals that a CYP1A2 carrier may have a hard time with. And what the science shows, I just pulled up the study while Michelle was answering, is that for people who are positive for CYP1A2, and it's the 1F allele, that's sorry for the geek stuff, but you might want to know that. At 1 cup a day, your risk of cardiovascular incident was the same as the general population. At less than 1 cup a day, it was the same as the general population. At 1 cup a day, you were 2.12 times, so more than double at risk of a cardiovascular incident. At 2 to 3 cups a day, it was 2.43 times, almost 2.5 times the risk of the general population. And if you had more than 4 cups a day, you're over 400% more likely to have a cardiovascular incident. So when you've had reactions to medications in the past, you really might want to do this genetic test. It's called the Detoxogenomic. And we'll post it here. My team in the background will hear this. It's from Genova, the Detoxogenomic test. And it's a blood draw, but you find out what chemicals, what pharmaceuticals is my body sensitive to. And you also find out a bunch of other stuff, like if you don't produce enough glutathione, the master antioxidant, things like that. So it's got a lot of value. It's a little bit expensive. I believe it's like $700 or something for that test. It's pretty comprehensive. It does a pretty good evaluation of your detox capabilities, but it's not inexpensive. Michelle, anything else you want to add to that?
Yes, it's interesting that you mentioned that, because whether you drink the coffee or put it up your bum, I'm trying to find a polite way to say that, there are people that are fast metabolizers that can do coffee enemas right before bed and go to sleep. And there are people that are slow metabolizers that if they do a coffee enema right before bed, it will keep them up hours into the night. So it does have that same impact. That's kind of like one of the classic ways to tell. There's people that literally can drink coffee and go right to bed. And then there's people that will say, hey, I can't drink any coffee past noon, or it's going to really negatively impact on my sleep. So it's interesting. So I don't know the effects cardiovascularly of putting it up your bum for that study, but I do know that it will affect people the same way with impacting on their sleep.
Thank you. A shout out to Donna in Prince Edward Island. Hello, Donna, and Jane from Massachusetts. And Doug says, hey, Doc, would love to hear if you were exposed and trouble breathing, if there's a good way to recover more quickly. Well, Doug, we did an entire Coffee with Dr. Tom series, and it's available. It's there on Facebook. My team will post a link to the first one or something so that you can, and we went through, I think it was 13 or 14 episodes of all the things you can do, from the nutrients to saunas, to fomentation, to exercise and pulse monitors, and monitoring your respiratory rate and monitoring your oxygen saturation levels. That's all done, man. It's all there and it's free. So you just have to do a little homework to find it. And we'll post the link to the first one. Steph says, hi, Dr. Tom and Michelle from Missouri. Sean Quilo says, hi, any advice for detoxing glyphosate and ochratoxin A? They were high on GPL tests. Michelle, I'll let you start with that one.
Okay, so the glyphosate on that test, it indicates a recent exposure. So you could have walked through Roundup that was just sprayed in a park and tracked that into your house and gotten exposure. You could have gotten glyphosate from the water you were drinking, or glyphosate from eating non-organic foods. So I would just take a deep dive. I'd make sure you're not wearing shoes in the house, like leave all the garbage from outside, put those shoes at the front door or outside the front door and start there. I would really focus on all organic food. And then I'd probably get my water tested and make sure that your source of water, because they're saying that even Berkey's, when you test the water, there's still glyphosate in the water if your water supply that you're putting in the Berkey, that it doesn't, and I don't know. I mean, I think maybe reverse osmosis might take out the glyphosate,
I
but I'm
don't
not
think
sure
so.
there.
That's more on metals and minerals.
Okay.
It may. I don't think so though.
I would test whatever water you're drinking. I would test it,
Absolutely.
and just make sure that it's safe. And then for the ochratoxin,
Oh, there's one more thing about that, Michelle. It's
yes.
unfortunate, but California wines,
Mhm.
because they irrigate the fields from the water that's near the vineyard. And so even if it's an organic vineyard, they're still spraying the fields and irrigating the fields with water from the streams and the rivers or the underground aquifers, and the chemicals have saturated down into the water supply, right? So California wines are a common source of glyphosates also.
Even probably the organic biodynamic, because they're probably close enough to somebody who's using the glyphosate. So just really do a deep dive on anything that you're putting into your body through your mouth, to make sure that it's safe. For those ochratoxins, it could be that you're getting that from food. So there's been some clinical research showing that ochratoxins can come from peanuts and non-medicinal mushrooms, grains, anything that's moldy. So alcohols, yeast containing bread. So anything that grows yeast or mold, or like peanuts are notorious. If your health is not optimal, get peanuts out, even organic peanuts, because the way they're grown, they're just full of aflatoxins and full of toxic mold. But sometimes it's from a source, like a building that was moldy. So I think it's really critically important to make sure that your environment is safe, and you can test your environment with an ERMI cloth. It's ERMI. And they say to do one of those at each source in your room. You can just buy one, save money, and just, wipe the top of ceiling fans, the top of door jambs, any place where dust has maybe built up over at least a week long period, and see if there's any ochratoxins in your environment. And I think it's really helpful to work with a practitioner who can help you deep dive and find out exactly where it's coming from for you. But if you have that ERMI that comes back positive, then it's important to have somebody come out and then identify where the mold is. But I think that can be the least expensive way to kind of initially see, are there high levels of various molds in your living environment?
Wonderful answer. Thank you so much for that. That's great. Cheryl asks, is Penta water structured water? Penta, I love Penta. This was, I don't know, 1994, maybe something. I heard about this water that was just about to start out in California. This is when I lived in Chicago. And I got the name of the company. I called them. I said, hey, I want your water. I want to do a study with your water. I said, who is this? I said, hi, my name's Dr. Tom O'Brien. I'm in Chicago. Chicago? How did you hear of us in Chicago? Because they were just starting. I said, I don't know. Someone mentioned it. And what Penta is, they run a current through the water. It's of course filtered and clean. It's pure. But then they charge the water. It's carrying a charge with it. So I said, send me enough to give 10 patients 4 bottles a day, because you have to drink enough water. So I want to drink 4 bottles a day for a month. So they sent me like 30 cases, a pallet of water comes to my office, and my office was on the 2nd floor of a building. So well, how are we supposed to get all this upstairs to get to the, we worked it all out. But every person, all 10 people reported they slept better. Their energy was up. I think it was 7 out of 10. Their percent body fat went down in 1 month, and their muscle mass went up, and they didn't change anything else. They just drank 4 bottles of this water a day. So energy up, sleep up, percent body fat down at 4 bottles a day. And I've always liked Penta water. So
My
Cheryl,
favorite tasting water. It tastes the best of any of those bottled waters.
agreed.
Mhm.
Let's see, Phyllis says, I'm looking at taking E3 Advanced. However, I'm very sensitive to any cultures. I'm gluten and lactose intolerant. I want to take it when I get food outside of the house. Michelle, do you want to address that one?
Yeah, which one was that? I was reading ahead. Do you want to read it again? Sorry, Dr. Tom.
I'm looking
I
at
will stop multitasking.
Yeah, of course, of course. I'm looking at taking E3 Advanced. However, I'm very sensitive to any cultures. I'm gluten and lactose intolerant. I want to take it when I get food outside of the house.
Oh, wow. I don't see any downside of it impacting, but as soon as I say that, somebody reacts to a supplement that has never reacted before. But I just feel like that is such an essential. If I had my purse here, I could pull out the bottle that I always carry in my purse, because
Well,
even
it's in Marcy's purse. It's in
yeah,
Marcy's purse.
even if I eat at a gluten-free restaurant, I still take it just to be on the safe side, because I really don't know what was happening in the kitchen or the transit with all of that food, right? And I also don't believe that we should have to live in a bubble. Now, people that are really sick should probably err on the side of prepping their own food at home, but I consider myself healthy. And so if I have the opportunity to eat in community with friends or to eat out, I just take it as a safeguard. If I think I've maybe got an accidental exposure to gluten, I'll take it 2 caps every night for a week, just to kind of get in there and clean out any residual gluten residue. So I am a huge proponent of that supplement, and I have not had anyone report that they had an issue with it. So
Neither have I, but I wanted to have you go first, and I didn't want to flavor the answer. But to be safe, your investment is get a bottle and then take one just before you have a meal, and just do one meal a day for 3-4 days. If you're going to have a reaction, it usually will occur within 3 days of taking something. So in general, when we make recommendations, if we're concerned about a sensitivity, we say, just start at a minor dose for 3 days. If everything's good, then titrate it up just a little bit at a time, at your own pace, whatever you feel comfortable with, but wait 3 days before you increase any more. Because if you're going to have a reaction, you're going to have a histamine reaction, some kind of reaction, it'll show within 3 days of exposures. So
I'm a big fan of low and slow. Open that cap up and take a quarter of a cap and work up from there, right? I mean, there's really no downside to that if you need to introduce it to your body slowly.
right,
But
right. Let's see. Wendy asked, "What keeps the body from absorbing vitamin D?"
ooh, there's so many issues in the gut
That's
that can prevent you from absorbing nutrients.
right. Do you have a week? And
Yeah.
it's a
Where's
week
the
long.
heal the gut dance, Dr. Tom? I haven't seen it in a while. Heal the
Say it
gut,
again?
heal the gut, the heal the gut dance.
Oh, the heal the gut dance. Right. I can't do it tonight, but
Yeah, it's so important. I see so many people that have such compromised digestion and absorption that we really have to work on that. And sometimes we have to do higher doses of vitamin D till we can check it frequently.
right. Vitamin D is a fat soluble vitamin. And this person, if you have problems with fats, if bowel movements float in the bowl, or you get any kind of symptoms when you eat more fatty meals, it may be a bigger picture than just one type of fat or fat soluble vitamin. It may be fats in general. So digestive evaluation needs done. You really need Michelle. Have a session or two with Michelle. Let us get your history, and we'll find out. Because if your vitamin D level is not going up and you're taking vitamin D with the stats that I started this show with, you don't want to wait around and see, well, maybe I should check into it in the future. You want your vitamin D between 50 and 75, and that's nanograms per milliliter if you're in the US. In other countries, you have to convert. Just go to Google and say convert 50 ng per ml, to whatever the markers are in your country's laboratory test results. And Google will convert it in a moment so that you can have relevant comparative numbers. But it's 50 to 75 nanograms per milliliter is a safe range to be in. I think everyone should be focusing on that as a 101 basic thing that you do. So if you're not absorbing vitamin D, find out why, my friend. And that was Wendy. Find out why, Wendy.
Mm-hmm.
What is the best solution for women with PCOS? Identify all the mechanisms that set you up for PCOS.
Blood sugar dysregulation. Pooja's an expert in PCOS. She's one of the practitioners on our team. I would schedule with her ASAP. But the very first thing you need to think about is blood sugar dysregulation. So making sure that you're testing fasting glucose, insulin, hemoglobin A1C, possibly glycomark is a new marker that they're using to monitor blood sugar. You want somebody who gets this, that's taken a deep dive on how to stabilize blood sugar. And it's not the same, it's not cookie cutter. Some people have hypoglycemia, some people have hyper, some people have a combination of both, some people have insulinemia where they're getting insulin surges. So much of the sleep dysregulation, hormone dysregulation, cortisol, it's all tied together with blood sugar, and it's best to work with an expert who can help design a plan for you based on labs and create a diet and supplement recommendations that can really target you, because it's likely we could line up 100 people, right, Dr. Tom, with PCOS, and they could all be a little bit different.
Right, they can have different manifestations of where the metabolic imbalances are that are creating the end stage falling over the waterfall into the pond, PCOS. That there are multiple factors. So Ira, by looking for the best solution, what that, and we're all looking for that, but what hopefully you'll take away from this answer is that the best solution for you is the best solution for you, not for the next person. And so you have to find out, where is it coming from? And the doorway in to evaluate all of that is blood sugar regulation. Mm-hmm. And there will be more that you have, you may have progesterone deficiencies or excess. There can be all kinds of manifestations of years of blood sugar dysregulation that manifests wherever the weak link is in your chain. But the doorway in is through the simple, inexpensive tests that Michelle just talked about. And Pooja, Pooja, on our team.
Dr. Pooja, she's done the deep dive, lots of additional studies, and that's one of her areas of expertise among many. But I would, if I had PCOS, I would book an appointment with her ASAP. Yeah, she's really good. And something that you can start tomorrow, you can go get a glucometer, and first thing in the morning, you got to get the little strips. It's not fun to prick yourself and make yourself bleed, but see what your blood sugar is first thing in the morning. See if it's below 85 or above 100, or if it's kind of in that sweet spot. And then 2 hours after a meal, test it again. And if it shoots above 140, these are US markers, so they're going to have to be converted for other countries. If it shoots above 140, then that previous meal was too high glycemic and you needed more fat and more protein. But then you also may have compromises. Maybe you're not eating those things because you're not breaking them down, and you may need support with breaking down fats and proteins. So I wish it was just like a simple do this and you'll be well, but this is something that you can do at home that I've had many clients connect the dots. Like, oh, if I have oatmeal and an apple, my blood sugar shoots up to 185. But if I have like a chicken sandwich wrapped in lettuce with avocado, so I'm having protein and fat, and then a big salad or like a lot of steamed vegetables, my blood sugar stays in the sweet spot. And once you start to connect, having your blood sugar above 140, you don't feel good. You feel out of sorts, you feel irritable. Having your blood sugar too low, same thing. There's so many kids right now that are being disciplined because they're hangry. It's a combination of hungry and angry because they were fed a bowl of cereal for breakfast and sent to school. And then they're expected to think when they're in like a acute hypoglycemia by 10 a.m. And it breaks my heart. Like when I think back to my teaching days, like how many of these kids, it was basically blood sugar dysregulation that was causing them to act out. And so I think it's child abuse. So to send your child to school with a high glycemic breakfast and then expect them to be well behaved and learn and think. And
now parents, don't get offended by what she just said. You didn't know, but now you know. And if you keep doing it, now it's child abuse. Nobody talks to you like this, but this is what you need to understand. This is for your grandchildren also, right? You have to learn how every individual is going to have a different response to the same quality food. And for someone that's having symptoms, you can assume that something's out of balance. And if something's out of balance, now you have to check to see what is it that's out of balance. So you can't keep giving them high glycemic foods and sending them to school. Now that you know that if your kid's falling asleep in school or hyperactive in school, or the teachers are suggesting some medications, you've got to check this. You'll save that child years and years of chemical abuse. Mm-hmm. All right, let's move on.
Okay, thanks for buffering that. I know I came across as a little harsh, so thank you. But it's just
no, but you're right on the money. You're right on the money with that. I mean, we're designed here to be wake up. You know, this is a wake up Facebook Live. Wake up, right? So we're not going to give you what's the best thing. There is no best thing, and so all we can give you is our best on how to determine for yourself what the best approach would be.
Exactly. Quincy says, I've had a month and a half of poor health after a reaction from dental anesthesia and new high VOC ceiling tires in our basement removed after a month. A urine test shows high mercury as well. I hardly ever eat fish, tuna, and filling was composite. Where else would the mercury be coming from? And would the detox protocol be the same for all three things mentioned?
That's really an interesting situation. So VOCs are volatile organic compounds. It's petrochemicals that are used to make ceiling tiles and make plastic and make so much of what we have in our homes that we're exposed to. And this particular packet of materials apparently was high enough for indoor air pollution to be so toxic, this person got sick. And so I understand the question. And then during that, he was also identified with high mercury. Well, where's the mercury coming from? Well, is this the first test you've done for heavy metals? This mercury may have been accumulating for the last 30 years in your body, for all you know. Unless you did a test 2 years ago, you were fine, now you have high mercury. That's different. That's different. So we just don't know enough to answer that question. I had a cataract when I was 44, and I was healthy. I was doing a lot of triathlons and scoring in the top 10% of the 30 to 35-year-olds. And I was 44, so I was walking strong, healthy guy. And no, my muscles and bones were healthy, but not my vision. I developed a cataract, and nobody could tell me why it occurred. It just happens. I said, oh, no, it doesn't. You know, so there's some reason why it occurred. So I started researching, and I found that lead poisoning could cause, I don't have any lead. You know, I live a clean life. Maybe I should check. And I had the highest level of lead of anyone I've ever tested. And I've done hundreds of heavy metal tests over the last 40 years. And I had the highest lead level of anyone. And I looked at that, and then when I was born in Detroit for the first 8 years of my life, we lived across the river from the Henry Ford River Rouge assembly line, the largest assembly line Ford had built up to that time. Right across the river, we were 1 block off the river, and there was no filters on the smokestacks. So I'm a 4-year-old, 5-year-old, 6-year-old kid riding my bicycle around the neighborhoods, sucking in lead. while I'm exercising and stuff, and it sat in my body for 40 years. And finally, enough damage occurred that it manifested as a cataract, which meant there was other damage that occurred, but this is the one that caught me, right? That I got diagnosed from. So if this is your first heavy metal test and it came back high in mercury, you have to determine, am I currently being exposed or not? Or is this interesting? People with high mercury often also have high ANA levels, anti-nuclear antibodies, which is the early warning that there's an autoimmune disease developing. And 87% of people who have elevated ANA antibodies develop an autoimmune disease within 3 years. In this one study, that they looked at 400 or 500 people, and all of those that had ANA antibodies elevated, who were normal and healthy, no autoimmune mechanisms going on, within 3 years, they were diagnosed with an autoimmune disease, 87%. Because mercury hides deep in the tissue, deep in the cells. It goes into the nucleus of the cell. And so your immune system, to fight this foreign invader, goes after it, and you make anti-nuclear antibodies. Now, there's other reasons for producing ANA antibodies, but that's one, right? So it just depends. But the question is, what's this question about it?
The protocol, would the detox protocol be the same for all three things mentioned?
For all three things mentioned.
I would absolutely do a neural zoomer plus. I wouldn't let anyone do any form of chelation unless you have an intact blood-brain barrier. That can be really scary and harmful for the brain. So I would definitely do that test. And then I really like the Quicksilver test because it helps to identify if this mercury is coming from a food source, if it's coming from environmental or a dental off-gassing. So if you don't have any history of mercury in your mouth, that might not be it, but maybe you're getting it from environment. You're inhaling all of this mercury. But before anyone addresses that mercury, like a full blood panel, let's see what your liver markers are doing. Let's make sure, like, overall you can handle detox. Right now, I'd probably detox by really making sure I'm getting lots of veggies in my diet to start with before you have some of this additional information.
Yeah.
He also asked, go ahead.
I would strongly emphasize the type of answer that Michelle is giving you is what you want. You want to investigate where is this coming from. The Neural Zoomer Plus blood test, we'll post a link for the Neural Zoomer Plus. 48 different markers of brain inflammation, including the most accurate measures. Do you have a breach of your blood-brain barrier? Which is what a leaky brain is. Your leaky gut, well, there's leaky brains. And if you got a leaky gut, you often already have a leaky brain. If you have depression or anxiety or any cognitive dysfunction, you already may have a leaky brain. So you have to check that before you start mobilizing deposited levels of mercury that's in your tissue. And you want to mobilize it to get it out, which is a good move, but you have to stabilize your blood-brain barrier first, or else that gets into the brain and it creates just a bonfire. And it's a difference between using a little charcoal lighter fluid to start a charcoal fire or using gasoline. If you have a breach of your blood-brain barrier, if you've got a leaky brain and you do a mercury detox, gasoline on the brain, gasoline on the fire, right? If you have an intact blood-brain barrier, it's like charcoal lighter fluid on coals. You squirt the charcoal lighter fluid on, you light a match, throw it on there, it doesn't catch sometimes. You have to light another match and lay it down there so the flame is still going, and squirt some charcoal lighter fluid on the charcoals next to it, and the splash will catch with that flame from the match, and then the fire will start, right? So you have an intact blood-brain barrier, you still have a threat to your brain when you do a mercury detox, but it's less of a threat. If you have a leaky brain, you're throwing gasoline on that fire. That's the way to think about it. So don't do this on your own.
He also asked, do you recommend a home purifier? And if so, which brand do you prefer? And I bought an air dock for my parents, and we can post the link for that. I think it's a great machine, and the replacement filters are affordable. I have an IQ Air, and it is such an investment. Whenever I see the light come on, I'm like, okay, here we go. And my sister has another like really expensive air purifier, and I just like finally got in touch with the company. $600 to replace those air purifiers. I'm like,
What?
invest in an air doctor. Do not, like, you can get an air doctor for practically half that price and the refill, and it's a really great machine, really effective. It's well researched, well made.
I bought 3 for my daughter when they moved into their new house about 5 months ago.
Love it. That's great. It's
One
excellent.
for each floor, because my grandchildren are living in that house, and that house was remodeled about 4 years ago, which is great. So everything's new, but some of the components in there are outgassing, right? So I want an air doctor. By the way, if you Google air filtration, home filtration systems, air doctor comes out #1. Of the top 10, it comes out #1. So we'll post the link here for you. That's why I bought 3 for my daughter, is because it's the #1 air filtration. So that's why we have it on our site, because
it's great.
we do the work.
And I would definitely recommend that, Quincy. I mean, if you had VOC ceiling tiles that were making you sick, then get one in the basement and one in your bedroom. And just look at the square footage that those cover, and just see how many you may need, or move it around. If you're going to go to the living room, carry it with you. They're not that heavy, and just make sure that you're doing whatever you can. That's a great way to make sure at least the air you're breathing is safer.
Agreed. Sarah has a really good question. My 9-year-old girl is celiac and has a pretty good diet. Warning, Will Robinson, warning. Pretty good. Should I be giving her supplements? I've heard very mixed info from pediatric doctors. That's really a great question, because the first thing to do, ask your doctors how many courses in nutrition they've had. Courses. And it will be 0. Now, 100 out of 126 medical schools in the United States, 73 or 74% of them did not offer 1 course in nutrition. They offer 3 classes. The average is 3 classes for their entire education. So they're just not trained. You don't ask a brain surgeon what to do about a bunion on your foot, right? You don't ask a pediatrician, what about nutrition? Because they don't know, unless they've done postgraduate training. And there's some really smart pediatricians who have gone the extra mile because they realized they just didn't know enough. So that's the first thing you have to know. The second thing is that your 9-year-old daughter's a celiac. Where did she get it? And so it sounds like there's a little, right. It sounds like, there may be a little resistance to really buying into what does this mean for the family. And you've got to understand, a new study just came out, and I'm doing a presentation on it for the Celiac Society of India next week. Actually, we're going to send announcements out to everyone for this. It's a free webinar on it. Back in 1999, in Sweden, they've got socialized medicine. They have records on everybody, right? And so they had 350,000 people that had the examination called an endoscopy. They put a tube down your throat, down into your intestines, snip out a little piece of your intestines and pull it out, look at it under a microscope. And that's how you diagnose celiac disease. So out of the 350,000 endoscopies they did, because people were sent to the gastroenterologist with gut problems of some type, they found 39,000 celiacs. So that's 300 plus thousand that were not celiacs and 39,000 that were. They followed them for 25 or 30 years. What did they find? The celiacs had when they're diagnosed with celiac disease, it was an 86% increased risk of having a fatal heart attack in the first year after diagnosis compared to the other 300,000 that were not diagnosed with celiac. And the increased mortality over years, they were twice as likely to die early of something, twice as likely to. Heart attack, Alzheimer's, something in their life compared to the other 300,000 of the same age. They compared them all. You're twice as likely to die if you're diagnosed as a celiac. Why? What do they do when you're diagnosed with a celiac? They put you on a gluten-free diet. What else do they do? Nothing. And so people are left to fend on their own. They don't know how to do it right. They eat the gluten-free foods that are crap, white crap, that have no fiber, they're not enriched, they have no nutrients, and they get sicker and sicker. At first, they feel great. 6 months, 8 months, a year later, they don't feel so good. And it's because they've changed their microbiome because they stopped eating grains. They stopped eating wheat. Not everything in bad is wheat. The fiber in wheat is good for you in terms of your good guys in the gut will use it, but the bad stuff in wheat is much worse. So you have to replace the good guys in wheat with foods that give you those nutrients. That's root vegetables. And you have to learn all of this. Now, that's all the background, 1999. A new paper just came out that looked at 300, I think it was 310,000. I don't remember because I've only read the paper once. It just came out 2 weeks ago. Same thing, and about the same number of celiacs, but now the life expectancy is 4 times worse for celiacs now compared to 1999. It was the SMR, the standard mortality ratio was 2 to 1 before. Now it's 4 to 1, 4.3 to 1. It's getting worse because more people, there's more gluten-free crap out there is one reason why. So you really need to learn how to do this right. You really need to work with our team and get this down because this is an investment in your family's future and your daughter's future. Excuse me for being so direct, but this is not something you put your toe in and dabble. You got to dive in and really understand this. You need to get educated. You don't have to become a nurse or, a science geek, but you need to understand the basic principles of how to do this in a healthy way. I'm not going to beat around the bush anymore about this because too many people are dying early in life and they die of cancer or they die of kidney stones or they die of autoimmune diseases or of Alzheimer's. And it was contributed to by the inflammation that develops around a poorly applied gluten-free diet. The gluten-free diet is excellent for you. You'll feel the healthiest you've ever felt in your life if you do it correctly. Unfortunately, we can't get the word out fast enough to people.
Stay out of that gluten-free aisle. Start there.
That's right.
That's not food. It's food-like products.
That's right. Now, I'll do gluten-free pasta once every couple of weeks. Who cares? I mean, it's okay. You just can't do that stuff regularly. It's not food. It's non-food. It's pretend food. But it tastes really good. It gives me that pasta feeling that I like. So I'll do it once in a while because I'm not perfect, right? But
I do. I love they have legume pastas with basically 2 ingredients, water and chickpea flour, and those are fun to have occasionally, to have that pasta comfort food. You just have to assess what you're eating. And some people are really getting over the 20 parts per million because they're having every meal multiple processed gluten-free items. Right.
Now let's go back to this 9-year-old. So what's going to happen here now? Now she's about to go into pre-puberty, or she's in pre-puberty. And what's going to happen if she's pretty good on her diet? Her hormones are going to get knocked way out of balance. And often for celiac girls, their cycles come late, a year later than their friends. And that's 10% of her life earlier, a year earlier, or a year later. And her cycles end early, and they tend to have a lot more menstrual problems and just hormonal imbalances because their tissues never developed to their optimum, because she was pretty good on her diet, and she had inflammation most of the time. And it inhibits, it's called organogenesis, the growth of your organs. As children, those organs are growing and developing. We're learning these crucial times in kids' life. The first 3 years, that's when the microbiome develops and is determined for life. For most people, is determined by 2 to 3 years old, 2.5 to 3 years old. And so parents need to be, and we'll be talking a lot about this in the future, because we're going to have a little one in a few weeks, right? But it's really important to give these kids the best shot at life possible. And another critical time is between 9 and 11, because they're about to go into puberty. So how are their organs developing, which determines their hormonal balance for the rest of their lives. So if I can be a little direct, which I've been known to do, your daughter can't be pretty good as a celiac. And who else in the family has wheat-related disorders? Get the wheat zoomer, do the pinprick on every, you don't have to go and get blood draws, just do the pinprick. It's just as accurate, according to Mayo Clinic. We'll post the wheat zoomer here. We can send you the pinprick, or go to your doctor and have them do your blood draw. But do the wheat zoomer test. It's the most comprehensive test out there. Do it for the family. If there's celiac in the family, you do it for all of them, and you're going to be shocked, because a couple of people, they have no symptoms whatsoever, but their immune systems are flaming fighting wheat right now. And it's going to show, you've heard me say, you pull at a chain, it always breaks at the weakest link. It's at one end, the middle, the other end, and you're pulling on the chain. If your immune system's fighting wheat and you keep eating wheat, you're pulling on the chain, and eventually it's going to break, and it's going to be kidney stones, or it's going to be attention deficit, or it's going to be psoriasis, or it's going to be bad acne, or it's going to be hormone imbalances, or it's going to be depression. It just depends on where the weak link is as to where that's going to happen.
And
Are you feeling me? Are you feeling me?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then just the question, should I give her supplements? I mean, I get asked this so frequently. I have fatigue. What supplement should I take? I have this. We need to know what she needs. I'm a big fan of praying. I'm not a fan of pilling and praying. So does she need iron? A lot of kids are iron deficient. Does she need vitamin D? We don't know unless we have some blood tests, some basic labs, right, to help us with that information. So I think that can help with knowing whether or not she needs supplementation.
I asked if you were feeling me, and I got 4 hearts. Really? So is that it? I mean, am I offending people here? Or are we just sitting back and being entertained, and you're eating popcorn, watching the screen?
Let's see. How do I do the heart? Oh, right up here.
Oh,
I'll throw a heart in there.
Thank you so much. I know we're good. We're good. Oh, there we go. Oh, thank you. Here they come.
Ah, nice.
Thank you so much. This is fun to do this, just to be open and answer your questions as best we can, and help to give you a bigger picture view. Okay.
One more question before we go, Dr. Tom. Talia says, what's the name of the supplement to take when exposed to gluten? It's
you have
rescue.
Yeah. You have what we're talking about is E3 Advanced Plus. We'll put the link here. E3, because there's 3 different enzymes in there, and they do a number of different things. They, if you think of protein like a pearl necklace, the acid in your stomach undoes the clasp of the pearl necklace, and now these enzymes work to break it, and now you've got 2 pieces. Other enzymes work to snip off the ends, and then the first one, those enzymes are snipping it again, So now you got 4 pieces, and then the other enzymes are snipping off the ends. So you're breaking it down into each pearl of the pearl necklace. And E3 Advanced Plus, it's a very comprehensive product. We'll put the link here for you. And hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people have sent us thank yous over the years. It's in Michelle's purse. It's in my wife's purse. Right? In the glove box of
It would be in your purse if you had a purse, Dr. Tom.
It would be in my purse if I had a purse, right?
I think there's one last thing to clear up before we go, and that's because I just saw a practitioner in one of these practitioner-only Facebook groups that I'm a member of, and he posted, I took 8 of the gluten digestive enzymes and they didn't help. So when I'm like, want to eat a little bit of gluten, how many of those enzymes do I have to take? And I was like, oh, cringing. So it's so important to know this is not like eat a croissant, take a fistful of these supplements. These are to protect you from trace amounts. This is not an excuse to eat gluten. Okay, so I think that's really important to clear up.
Agreed. There are 3 questions we're going to answer here. Tammy says, if you only have one air purifier, where would you put it? Where you spend the most time, and where your kids spend the most time. So you wheel it into the family room when they're in the family room all afternoon or something. Then you wheel it in the bedroom when they're in the bedroom. But wherever you spend the most time, that's where you want it. Let's see. Melissa says, how can I slow down puberty onset in our daughter? That's so you have to identify. It's the same answer as PCOS. So go back to earlier in the show and listen to that answer, but just substitute early puberty with PCOS, and it's the exact same answer. Amal asks, and Amal, hi Amal, says, what do you know about lithium orotate at a low dose of 2.5 to 5 milligrams? Been hearing some interesting research on this as a natural brain salt, not to be confused with lithium citrate, the allopathic drug. Been around for years. Article came out in Vitamin Research, was the company. They're not around anymore, but they published an article on it in their newsletter. It was a great article in the earlier mid-90s, and it's very effective. When you've got lithium in the water, there's a much lower incidence of depression and anxiety, schizophrenia in communities that have higher lithium water, and not where it's dangerous at all, but just higher lithium water, that it's shown community-wise to have a beneficial impact. And I've used it over the years on and off. I'm not a psychiatrist, but when patients have been anxious, it's one of my first go-tos, Amal, in those dosings. And then, all right, Jeff's got one in here. I've been suffering from nerve damage on my face, cause of shingles. Should I wait it out? You're always good to address your symptomatology, but ask the question, why do I have shingles? And it's pretty common to see, but I would certainly do a Neurozoomer Plus that Michelle talked about earlier right now, because the herpes virus is one of those viruses that gets in your brain. And if you've already got antibodies to herpes in your brain, if it's elevated, then you'll realize you have to do a deep dive and address this in your life right now, because elevated antibodies in your brain are killing off brain cells. And that is the mechanism of dementia, is that we're killing off brain cells for 20 years before we have any noticeable evidence of cognitive decline. Michelle, you want to talk about that for a minute? I'm going to show a slide here, but it'll take me a minute to find it so that people can go away with this information.
Sure. Yeah, I completely agree. And Neurozoomer Plus, a really extensive viral panel. They're very pricey, but you want to just see what the viral load is in your body. And then I've seen some really great results with homeopathics that are specifically for cytomegalovirus or herpes simplex 2 or 1. They kind of target, and they're very gentle but effective. We got to stay the course. It can take 7 or 8 months of daily treatment with these to allow your body to release that viral load completely. But at the same time, you want to be diving down and seeing what else is going on, because I often see viral load regulate and normalize once some of the other foundational issues that are going on with somebody's health have been resolved. So yeah, it's miserable though. I have somebody close to me that's suffering from shingles often.
Sorry to hear that. Yeah. All right, I'm going to share my screen here. Let's see. Give me just a moment to do that. Here we go. And it took me over an hour to make this slide. So I love showing this slide whenever I get a chance because it took me so long to make it. So this comes from Health and Human Services. This was their advisory council last year. This is their summary about addressing the cognitive decline that ends with Alzheimer's. And first they talk about, we have a normal level of antibodies to our brain. And the same concept's true for your heart or your liver or your thyroid or all of our tissue. You have a normal level of antibodies. Why? Because you got to get rid of the old and damaged brain cells to make room for new cells. Because every cell in your body regenerates, except your teeth. You have an entire new body every 7 years. And how does it happen? You got to get rid of the old and damaged cells, and brain antibodies or antibodies to the cell are one of the mechanisms to get them out of there. That's why when you do a blood test, there's a normal reference range of antibodies to your brain or to your thyroid or to your adrenals or to your bones. There's a normal level. But when you have elevated antibodies, you're killing off more cells than you're making, and that ain't good. So we have a normal level of antibodies first. Then, because of our lifestyles and the things that we're exposed to, we create inflammation in our bodies. And we get elevated levels of antibodies from the air we're breathing, from the food we're eating. But you see here where it says it's non-symptomatic. You can't tell this is going on. And this is going on for, look at the length of time this is going on for. You're killing off brain cells. That's why this test, the NeuroZoomer Plus, is so important, because you find out right now, oh no, this is not good. And you're going to be worried. And it'll be the kick in the pants to do what you have to do to figure out, why am I killing off brain cells? And you'll read my book, You Can Fix Your Brain. And you'll take our brain masterclass, and you'll 84 videos or 87 videos in the brain masterclass on each little point about where does all this inflammation come from and how do you get it out of there. We'll put the link here. You've already got the link for the NeuroZoomer. We'll put the link there for the brain masterclass. What happens next? So in this prodromal stage that goes on for 20 years, but then it moves on. Now you've got mild cognitive impairment. Where did I park my car? I thought I parked it in this aisle in the shopping center. Or where's my keys? Or whatever it should be. And you joke with your friends, I'm getting old. I'm not remembering the way I used to, haha. It ain't funny, excuse me. And this goes on for, how long does this go on? Take a look. What does it say? The average is 7 years. This is from Health and Human Services. They're trying to put the big picture together so doctors understand where this whole thing comes from and why, when you're diagnosed with Alzheimer's, there's never going to be a drug that's going to fix that, because you've killed off so much of your brain by that point. There's no brain left to keep functioning. But after 7 years, now you go to mild Alzheimer's. Now you've got reading problems and object recognition and poor direction sense, and then it goes to the moderate, and then it goes to the severe. And so this whole mechanism is going on. You have a viral infection right now, and it's giving you shingles. You do the NeuroZoomer Plus, and you find out, what is it that's going on for me right now in my brain? Because this may be a blessing for you to have these symptoms right now. And for the symptoms, you can go online and you can look up DMSO, David Michael Sam Oxford, DMSO. And just read about DMSO and all the people that talk about how they use it for different types of pain, and lots of testimonials on it. I've used it with your particular type of symptoms in the past, and it works wonders. So just go there to learn more on how to mix it. You have to use distilled water to mix it, and grind up a little aspirin maybe, and then mix it with the DMSO and put it on there. It's effective. So deal with the short-term symptoms, but deal with the long-term potential problem. Get wise about it now. And with that, you know, we've gone over a bit. Michelle, any last messaging you want to say?
No, that was excellent. I think it's just really empowering to get, it's mindset. It's all about mindset, right? And it's so empowering to, is something stuck? Can you hear me?
No.
Okay. I felt like it was empowering to get my NeuroZoomer Plus back, even though I had some elevated antibodies. And so many people tell me I'm terrified to get those results back. But you've taught me that it takes decades and decades of damaging the brain before you get symptoms, and then you eventually get diagnosed, right? So find out now when you can prevent it and turn it around. Just look at it as such an empowering thing to see where the weak links are. If there's a bunch of things out of range in the viral bacteria infection category, if there's a lot out of range in the blood-brain barrier permeability, in the brain autoimmune, then you're able to target and really focus on that area to work on. So just look at it as like, this is amazing information to protect the health of my brain long-term. Focus on what's going on right now and turn this around. At least we can arrest the development of disease, right? The research says that.
Yes, fully agree. My first brain, the NeuroZoomer Plus, I think, I don't remember, it was 12, maybe something like that were positive. What? Out of 48, I had 12 different markers of inflammation in my brain. Well, my follow-up one a year and a half later, 0. You know, so when we talk to you that you can arrest this, you can. And sometimes it's going to take you a year and a half, 2 years, but you're on the path and you're saving the rest of your life. Read my book, You Can Fix Your Brain. It's also audio. I did the audio for that book. Hardest thing I've ever done in my life, but it's good. I know it's really good. Get a lot of positive feedback on it. But address this. Hopefully that we motivate you to take the first step forward in better care for yourself. So with that, Michelle, just say thanks again. It's always so much fun with you, and it goes so quickly.
How did an hour and 15 minutes fly by like this? But yes, it's always enjoyable. Thank you so much, Dr. Tom.
Thank you.
And thank you everyone for joining us.
Yes. Please like us, share this. You know the stuff to do. Take a minute or 2 minutes, share this with somebody. We just gave you an hour and 20 minutes. Give us 2 minutes if you like it, so that Facebook puts us out to more people. All right. Thank you so very much. See you next week. Bye-bye.